So today I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, the author of 12 Rules for Life, among many other things. And just to say how grateful I am for all of his lectures and books. They've just had a huge impact on how I think and act. But those are topics for future videos. Today I just wanted to discuss the Peterson phenomenon more generally. Because whatever you think about the man, if anything, it's kind of strange that a clinical psychologist could go on a worldwide tour, attract 300,000 people in 130 cities, and lecture. When was the last time you bought a ticket to watch your favorite psychologist lecture? So Peterson must be tapping into something to garner that kind of reaction. People are coming up to him and saying, I was nihilistic, I was on the verge of committing suicide, but you saved me, thank you. So I'm hoping to uncover some of what that is today. But who is Peterson anyway? Well, he's a Canadian born in Fairview, Alberta in 1962. He has a PhD in clinical psychology and established a practice seeing about 20 people a week for most of his career. He's taught at Harvard, he's a professor at the University of Toronto, and so that's a bit of what his career has been like. But I'd also say that's just a good reflection of who he is as a person, because, well, he likes to teach and he likes to help people. And as he's gotten more famous, I would say that hasn't really changed, it's just a matter of scale. Instead of seeing 20 people a week, now he's providing a psychological intervention for millions of people. What else would I say? Well, I guess I've just been impressed with his commitment to telling the truth. I was watching an interview from before he got famous, and he was talking about, well, when he was growing up, he was, very intelligent and verbally fluent and could, well, demolish people with his argument skills. Well, he was studying communist Russia and Nazi Germany and how these societies devolved. And he came to the conclusion that it wasn't some sort of like top-down tyranny from Hitler or Stalin and innocent people at the bottom. No, these societies were corrupt from top to bottom. They were pathological all the way through. And a lot of it had to do with people accepting lies, just talking lies all the time. So he came away with a conviction to tell the truth, and was confronted with the things that he'd been saying through all of his life, that he was convinced that 99% of the things that he'd been saying were lies, that they were just self-serving ways to notch himself up higher on the food chain to make himself more impressive to other people. So he basically, he just tried to, from there on out, just try to speak truthfully, which I think eventually got him into some trouble, and that's actually kind of how he got famous. So that's, I guess, the next point that I want to make. How does a relatively obscure Canadian psychologist get international notoriety? And that began in 2016, when Canada was deliberating over new legislation, Bill C-16, which purported to protect the rights of transgender persons. And Peterson, in September of 2016, posted a YouTube video that was critical of it, because his contention was that it contained compelled speech. Transgender people have preferred pronouns, and the bill made it illegal to use the wrong pronouns. So Peterson's contention is that this is compelled speech. I guess I need to back up for a moment. That Canada doesn't exactly have free speech like America does, or the US. They have freedom of expression with reasonable limits. So they sort of honor free speech, but they have additional restrictions like hate speech. And basically this new law would consider not using the right pronouns hate speech. So Peterson's point was that, well, this is beyond a restriction on free speech. This is mandated speech. Now you have to use these pronouns under penalty of law. And not only that, but these words like sie and zur, they're deeply political and ideological, and it just seems very authoritarian to make people who might not even agree with these words to mandate their use. So that was, evidently controversial, because, he was contesting something that was protecting a vulnerable group of people like transgender people. So that's how he got into the spotlight, but, most people usually fade into obscurity after a couple weeks, but that's not what happened with Peterson. And it's hard to tease out exactly why that happened. I guess he was connected with some other controversies, but I think a lot of it was that he had already posted like 500 hours of his lectures on YouTube. So some people came for the controversy, but stayed for the interesting content. And he just interviewed very well. So if you put him on Joe Rogan or Kathy Newman, rather infamously, he performed very well, and I think earned himself fans, whether he was in a pleasant conversation or in a very combative situation. Either way, he walked away with more fans. But that still doesn't really explain why Peterson's message was clicking with people. And I think that has everything to do with where our culture has been heading. People increasingly seem to don't know the meaning of life. Why are we here? I see posts on Facebook fairly regularly that are things like, there has to be more to life than paying bills until I die. And, I think historically people didn't have this problem as much. Well, I mean, for one, privation and poverty and external threats, people had a heck of a tough time just staying alive, that they didn't really have time to to worry about those kind of things. But even beyond that, they also had things that they had allegiance to: their family, tribe, nation, religion, all sorts of places, institutions in life that they could find meaning and purpose. But in our modern society, with our unprecedented wealth, prosperity, and just our scientific power, increasingly we've undermined these institutions. We don't think that we don't really need them as much as we used to. So, nations, I suppose America is a corrupt capitalist patriarchy, at least that's what the leftists would say. Family, kids, they just get in the way of your best life now. And men and women are actually seem to be starting to fear each other, that women think all men are predators, and men think that women are just gold diggers who are going to take half of their wealth, divorce them, and take half their money for the rest of their lives. Religion, that's just old superstitions from dead people who, we know that science is true and powerful. We see the evidence through our iPhones and that airplanes fly, and this and our understanding of scientific truth doesn't match well with doesn't jive with this religion stuff. So it's probably useless too. So we've kind of brushed that aside. So in so many ways, people are left with nothing. I heard Ravi Zacharias, a Christian thinker, who I guess framed what most people contend with in their life, the four questions that that people ask, which is origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. And I don't know, I just felt this as like a useful framework for understanding, what people grapple with. Where do I come from? What's the meaning of life? How should I act as a living being who has to act in life? And where am I headed after I die? And our culture has said, we evolved. The universe came out of an accident, and we evolved to humans today. We're going to die, and that'll be the end of it. There's no meaning in life because there's nothing beyond this life, and there's no. You don't have to act in any sort of way because, again, there's no meaning to life. And some people can kind of manage that. Some people can throw themselves, into their family or career or whatever, but most people are very bad at generating their own meaning for life. And I think this is where Peterson is, prime to step in and become relevant, because he has something to say. I don't think he has a ton to say actually on origin and destiny. He's an evolutionary psychologist, so he believes in the theory of evolution, and I suppose he's agnostic. That he would say that I don't believe God exists, but I fear that he might. So he's humble enough to acknowledge that there's things beyond him that he doesn't understand or know. And he also, I would say, he doesn't actually even necessarily address meaning head on. But I think what he really has to talk about is what he really has something to say on is morality. That you're gonna find the meaning in your life through how you act, and you're gonna find meaning in what you willingly take on. Because our culture has just been talking about rights. We gotta get more gay rights, transgender rights. We gotta get healthcare for everyone. Rights. But Peterson's just like, we're missing the other half of that coin, which is responsibility, the things that we take on to ourselves. you're never going to find meaning in your life in the things that are just given to you. The only place you're going to find meaning in life is the things that you personally take on. And if that's, for some people, it is starting a family. And for some people, it's going to be their faith in the religion. And I guess what Peterson would suggest, if you're completely lost, start by cleaning your room, which has become kind of an internet meme. But it's useful advice that you have to positive value. You have to think of like, okay, how do I want to set up my room so it serves my purposes, so it's actually a good place for me to spend time. And you have to get everything to where it's supposed to be, and it's something that's under your control, and you're not going to harm anybody by tinkering with it. And he would actually even go one step farther to say you should make your room beautiful, which I'm actually a little afraid of because, well, I'm convinced I have poor taste in art. So, but anyway, so there's so many ways where you can start with yourself and work outward. So that's, I guess, some of Peterson's advice to people. So that's some of where Peterson is really clicking with people. And also he's a clinical psychologist with 30 years of experience. He knows a lot of things about the crazy things that make people tick and what makes them different, and anyway, in so many ways he has so much to say about the human condition. And I guess something that's, I guess, sort of a critique of Peterson. Well, I guess I'd better, how would I phrase this? That there's limits to Peterson's message, and I think he himself would acknowledge it. That in considering, I sort of came to this realization after just contemplating the people who are attracted by Peterson's message, because primarily the people who are most enthralled by Peterson's message and whose lives seem to radically turn around are people, young men in their 20s to 30s. And sure, there are plenty of exceptions, women, older, younger, but generally it seems to be people who have who've been left adrift, but they still have a lot of, well, they're healthy and they have a ton of potential that they're just squandering. And Peterson's message is just, it's very attractive to people who have so much spare capacity. And I guess what I would say is that it's not necessarily appealing to people who, it's not as appealing to people who are sick and don't have as much spare capacity to offer. It's not as appealing to people who have already lived most of their life, who already have grandkids. I let my mom read 12 Rules for Life, and she didn't find it quite so gripping. I think in part because, generational difference, that when she was growing up, not all of these questions about the meaning of life were quite as up for grabs and as dreadful as they are today. But yeah, I think also just because, she's lived a good deal of her life, and she has kids, grandkids, and has found places in her life with deep meaning, her Bible study and other things. So it doesn't quite have the same impact on everyone. So that's, I guess, just a limitation on Peterson's message is not for everyone. But I am so grateful for Peterson's message and what he's doing in the culture as a Christian, actually. It's kind of interesting because you'd think that Peterson would be potentially a threat to Christianity, and the reason being is that, he's basically seems to be demonstrating a way that you can be a good moral person without God. But he in his lectures, basically someone straight up asked that question. It's like, now that we have all these tools and understand like the wisdom in the Bible, can't we just, pull out the wisdom and skip the God part? And Peterson, I guess, was, humble enough, or I think he understood something. He had the wisdom to say, no, we can't dispense with God. A lot of paraphrasing there, but Peterson wouldn't take him up on that offer that we're done with God. And I think Peterson is just opening up people to the idea that there's truth beyond science. That science is incredibly powerful. It tells us so much about what the world is made out of, but it just has absolutely nothing to say about how we live our lives. That's where things like religion and morality come in, to help guide people on how you should live your life. Which, again, not there in science. You're not going to find it. So I'm just grateful for Peterson and what he's able to provide for people. And he's making intellectual, cynical, nihilistic people open to truth. That's just huge to me because, well, I'm just hoping that they'll live long enough, that they'll be rescued from their nihilism long enough to come around to Christ, to come around to having faith in something beyond themselves. Because that's where they'll ultimately find true meaning. At least that's my personal opinion. But anyway, so that's my video today on Jordan Peterson. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I have future topics coming up related to some of the things that Peterson's talked about. So I hope you look forward to that. I guess recommendations. If you're interested in Jordan Peterson at all, well, there's some interviews. If you like watching a contentious interview and seeing someone prevail over controversy, then the Kathy Newman interview is enjoyable. It's something. If you like a more relaxed interview, Joe Rogan is great. Yeah, Dr. Oz is a lot of fun. But I would say that my favorite thing that Jordan Peterson has ever done is his personality and transformations class. He's recorded a class that he taught at the University of Toronto. And it's a full psychology course. It's really practical and interesting, and well, that's made a huge impact on my life, and it's actually that is the topic of one of my future videos. So anyway, those are some things that Peterson has done that I think are valuable. So yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have anything to comment, if you have thoughts on the purpose of life or anything else, hope you'll leave that in the comment section. But yeah, that's all for now. Bye.